Hey guys, David here, back again to review Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and this time it is for the 8th episode, I believe, of the 2nd season, entitled The Things We Bury. And it's a very interesting title because it's supposed to connect everything that happens in this episode to the theme of burying things that will somehow creep up once again in the future, sometimes even literally in the case with Whitehall. But what I took away from the title for this episode is the term things, because there are so many things in this episode that my only slight complaint, this may be my only complaint about the episode. I might have a few nitpicks, but my only formal complaint about the episode would have to be that there are so much things going on in this episode with different stories. Our team of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents are kind of spread out doing their own thing that is ultimately come together with one common goal, which is to find this city that was discovered in the last episode and of trying to get there before Hydra. That it's sometimes a little tough to follow all of these different stories because there is a lot. Let's go ahead and talk about the first one, Daniel Whitehall. The first big thing about this episode is that we finally get the reveal as to, well, most of the reveal as to how Whitehall has managed to survive all these years through the investigation conducted by May, Simmons, and Mac, and the interrogation that Bobby, Morse, and Hunter are doing on that guy Bakshi, who's the guy that Ward left for Coulson to find at the end of last week's episode. Which, by the way, I think I owe that guy an apology because this whole time I kept calling him British. But it turns out that he's Middle Eastern because not only does he have a Middle Eastern name, not only, both the character and the actor, because I found the actor on Twitter and it turns out that the dude's Middle Eastern, but also there's a line of dialogue in here where they say he trained for so and so long to be able to get rid of his accent. So I'm like, I always feel bad about myself when I get somebody's ethnicity wrong because that almost makes me feel racist in some way. I know technically it doesn't mean that I'm racist, but yeah, it just makes me feel bad. But anyways, they do an interrogation on him that results in him trying to commit suicide, which shocks both Hunter and Bobby, leading to them having sex. Okay, it happens. But through their investigation and interrogation that leads to these flashbacks back to 1945 with special cameo by Hayley Atwell as Peggy Carter, again trying to make us connect with the character, that way we can get ready for Agent Carter later on in January, which I will probably give a chance. I probably won't review it episodically like I do Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but I'll probably check out the whole first season, if there is a whole first season, and then I'll give my review of the overall season later on down the pipeline. But for now, let's focus on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. We get flashbacks of Whitehall back in 1945 with Hayley Atwell, which served more of a purpose with Whitehall than it did with Carter, because it was cool to see Peggy Carter, but you can kind of tell that she was only in those scenes so that they can get us ready for Agent Carter. Not more of a marketing ploy, more so than actual development for the character, because she really didn't do much instead of being the Bobby Morse of that particular scene. What we do learn, however, is that Whitehall did in fact age. He did grow to be an old man, but it is in 1989 where, through some kind of reemergence of Hydra through the inner workings of S.H.I.E.L.D. like we learned in Winter Soldier, and hopefully we learned as to what was the thing that caused agents to all of a sudden get to Whitehall and say, hey, we need to bring this guy in. I mean, I know that, you know, what's his face? Zola was the parasite within S.H.I.E.L.D. that was creating and spreading Hydra, but I want to know what was the direct order to say, hey, we need Whitehall to get to be taken out of this prison, bailed out, and then we can go and have him perform surgery on that one lady who is also immune to the powers of the obelisk that he experimented on back in 1945 through those flashbacks. It is through the surgery that we learn how he got the ability to reverse time. He Benjamin Button himself back. However, the slight nitpick I have is that he is immensely vague to that one guy when he asks him, what did you do? And he just says, I just got enough from her. Enough of what? And it's hopefully the reason why they kept that on the wraps is because later on we'll have others. Because that flashback where we see him performing the surgery, that was a flashback for us, the audiences. This isn't information that the people at the S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, May and Simmons and Mac, aren't learning about. They're just learning that Whitehall is the same guys that Reichenhard, whatever his last name was, but they're the same guy from 1945. So they're puzzled as to how this has come to be. And of course they suspect that it's the obelisk because after witnessing the Avengers and whatnot, it was kind of a little weird to still have Hunter and Mac be like, how can this be in the world where we got aliens coming from wormholes after the events of the Avengers? So sometimes they gotta remind themselves like, oh yeah, aliens exist, so at this point anything can happen. So hopefully later when they come into some kind of direct confrontation with Whitehall, our team will learn the exact details as to how he is that he reversed the clock on his age, just like we will at the same time. The only other considerable problem is that so far, because this might change, but so far Whitehall is not that interesting of a villain. He's a villain. He's a foe for our team to go up against, and a definite pawn to expand Hydra. Another head that they need to cut off. But he's not doing anything significant or complex to make me go, oh my god, this guy is a great villain, and he's very memorable. Not really. You know who might just end up being the more memorable villain? Is Skye's father, the Doctor, because when he came into this episode, the first couple of scenes that he had with Whitehall, they were kind of okay, there was nothing special about them, but nothing bad about them either. But it was in that scene later on with Coulson, who, with his team, are trying to look for the city, and for the majority of the episode, they have a couple of scenes that had some funny dialogue and had some cool scenes with Fitz trying to conquer his physical limitations. But nothing actually happened until the very end. And even then, it was actually pretty exciting to see them go out on the field. And more so to see Fitz actually get out there, making him an even cooler character now, because not only is he trying to deal with his personal issues both physically and mentally, but now he's getting out there. He's actually doing something just like Skye. So this team is really coming into their own, especially the characters that I wasn't a huge fan of back in Season 1, Skye, Fitz, and they're really flourishing. So that's cool, and so things got exciting and rather tense, leading to Trip getting shot. And as much as I keep saying that Trip doesn't have a whole lot to do on the show, I still gasped when he got shot, because I'm like, oh, wow, I know I said that, he might be the most expendable one here, considering that he's not necessarily new, and he hasn't done anything immensely interesting either, but wow, they might just kill him off, only to be a serviceable plot device to bring in the Doctor in what I consider to be his best scene so far on the show, because his dialogue and the way he was portrayed by Kyle MacLachlan was just so good. He was just so nonchalant about the whole thing, like, yeah, I shouldn't say that, manners or something like that. I don't know, it's just the creepy vibe he was delivering, while at the same time feeling like a time bomb just waiting to go off was not only cool, but also the way he thought about it, how he sees that opportunity to be like, hey, Coulson, I would really like to talk to you. By the way, I just cut this guy's arm, and he's probably gonna die if I let go of it. So, yeah, you really need to listen to me now. It's like he created a bomb right there without actually creating an explosive. But before Coulson manages to tell Skye that he did confront his father and is hoping to confront him again, the city has been found. Where? We don't know exactly. We'll just have to wait. The only other part of the plot that had a couple of scenes, and I felt like it deserved a little bit more attention, considering how fascinating this other character is as a villain, is Ward and the whole thing with his brother, where there is still a sense of ambiguity as to whether or not the brother was telling the truth, where he admitted that he killed the younger brother and was doing it because he was jealous of how much attention he was getting from their mother. Because at the end of it all, he said it, but maybe he just said it so that he can live, and so that Ward doesn't end up killing him, even though he ends up doing that, which leads us to believe that maybe Ward still is that psychopath, and maybe the other brother was telling the truth. But so ends the reign of Senator Christian Ward, and Grant Ward, our former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent turned nutcase, decides to go back to Hydra, which is what I initially thought was going to happen in last week's episode, but now he's this rogue lone killer setting out with his own agenda. Now that he managed to complete his agenda, he decides to move against his next target, which is more than likely going to be S.H.I.E.L.D. He is quite obsessed with her in an appropriately creepy fashion, but he knows that the only way to hopefully get face to face with her while maintaining the upper hand is to join Hydra. So he ends up going to Whitehall and gets recruited by him at the end of this episode, thus leading to a meeting between him, Whitehall, and the Doctor. That results in a twist ending that it made the character of the Doctor to be much more complex, sympathetic, but at the same time, this villain with a background story that adds dimensions to him. You know, he's not just a force for our S.H.I.E.L.D. agents to go up against like Whitehall. This makes for a good villain that, again, I've stated before this, it's very much like Darth Vader and Sky's Luke Skywalker. Because the twist is that the woman that Whitehall operated on and completely torn apart to figure out how she works is actually the Doctor's wife. Hence the reason why he decides to join with him, because he's doing that. If you guys have seen the movie Gangs of New York, the Doctor is pretty much channeling Leonardo DiCaprio's character there, where this is a revenge story, but in order to pull this whole thing off, you need to get close to your enemy, which is what Leo does in that movie with Daniel Day-Lewis's character, Bill the Butcher. So it's pretty much mimicking that same story, but I dig it. There's something kind of romantic about it, and when I say romantic, I don't mean, you know, romantic like that, like lovey-dovey. I mean romantic in a sense of I don't know, like that other definition of romanticism, where something is passionate, but it's not because it's love, but because it's rooted deep down inside. I've always dug stories like that, and I'm glad that they're incorporating it here in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. with the character of the Doctor, being that he has certain layers to him that makes him more than just a cookie-cutter villain. Like I said, my only actual problem with the episode was that there was a slight sense of disconnect between all these different things going on in this episode, because the team was literally broken up into groups, each one doing its own thing. And the result of that was the whole story with Ward not getting as much screen time as I wish it could have gotten, but I guess there was I got a feeling from the scenes that were placed in this episode that made me feel like maybe the showrunners needed to compromise and put these scenes in there so that in the next couple of episodes leading up to the mid-season finale, will have enough other material that has to do with Ward that will be more serviceable to those episodes. But still, yet another solid episode from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I give episode 8, I'm a little mixed up here because I remember S.H.I.E.L.D. and Gotham both premiered the same week, but then S.H.I.E.L.D. missed a week and is going to miss another week next week. So the numbers are going to start to vary here. But I believe this is the 8th episode in Season 2. I give The Things We Bury 8 out of 10. So another good 8 out of 10, and I'm looking forward to the next one, which is in another 2 weeks. So thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys thought of the new episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I'll see you guys in 2 weeks with another review of S.H.I.E.L.D.